Hey guys, it's Pablo, the host of The Wine Maverick, and today's episode is brought to you by Identity Wine Company. Identity wines are truly artisan small lot wines sourced from unique vineyards throughout California and handcrafted in Napa Valley by me, Pablo Antonio Suarez. For more info, head over to www.identitywines.com where you can check out my current releases in the online bottle shop. You can check out wine club membership options and learn more about me and my journey in becoming a winemaker in Napa Valley. Identity Wine Company. Every bottle has a story. Ooh, Identity Wine. Yeah. Now, let's start the show.
The Wine Maverick is prepared for takeoff. Clear the runway. In 3, 2, 1.
Ready?
Cheers. Hello, and welcome to The Wine Maverick. I'm your host, Pablo Antonio Suarez, and welcome to the inaugural episode. With me in studio today, I have my guest, Miss Sheena Baldia. Say hi, Sheena.
Hi, Sheena.
All right, so first episode, so we're going to be working through some things. We're just going to figure out our flow. Basically, the way this works is I bring on a guest, and the guest decides what they want to talk about. So we'll go from there.
I think the guest also gets to choose what we drink, right?
That's right. We have a bottle of wine here. So,
I chose a bottle.
what bottle did you choose?
I chose Identity Wine Company's Identity Crisis number 2. Red blend from North Coast, California. I don't know why I chose it. I'm just kidding. I know exactly why I chose it. I chose this because Pablo Antonio Suarez is the winemaker for Identity Wine Company. And I feel like today's episode is very fitting for the wine company and just kind of what's going on in the world with wine. And I feel like you may or may not actually be having an identity crisis with your wine co.
That's a very good point. I think there definitely is some kind of identity crisis going on. So I am a very small upstart winemaker. Launched the company officially in 2020. Came out to Napa by way of Miami back in 2018 to learn how to make wine and become a harvest intern at a small family estate in Corneros. And yeah, launching a company, any company, but albeit a small winery, is a big feat. And just I'm up against a lot of really big established companies that are doing it and doing it well, and I'm just trying to like survive in a big ocean.
You want to tell me about your wine or what?
So the wine that my lovely guest Sheena has chosen today is a red blend. It is the crisis because I am basically blending a bunch of varietals together. Varietals that might not seem to make sense, but sometimes it's like barrels that I have laying around. Each vintage I am kind of just building on stuff that I have or stuff that I've held back. And its whole aim is to be crushable, drinkable, approachable. Really not supposed to take itself too seriously. I feel like in the industry we tend to take things too seriously, and there's a lot of snobbery that goes behind it. This wine is supposed to be anti that. Even the bottle that I put it in, it is a flint clear glass, which is not normal for a red wine, and it's just me being very playful with kind of the marketing and the idea that wine does not have to be one thing or two things.
No foil top either.
No foil top either. So again, just trying to be as cost effective, eco conscious, and fun and playful. That is what Identity Company is.
Nice.
Yeah. You want to take the first sip?
I already did.
Oh, you did. She snuck a sip in there. I didn't even see it.
Well, you were talking so much, I had to do something.
So this is my podcast, and it's going to be really interesting to get out of my own way because I do that. I do wax poetic, so I will really need to mind myself for the sake of you, our lovely listeners. I don't want to bore you too much. And that's what Sheena's here for.
Well, I also don't know what Pablo is going to keep or edit out of this, but I think that it should be known that I am his girlfriend.
There you go.
So if I'm giving him a little bit of crap here, it's all out of love and familiarity. So.
Do you want to talk about briefly how we met or no? Briefly.
Yeah, I guess that works because I'm no longer in the wine industry, but I was in the wine industry, and we actually met because Pablo and I both worked at wineries, separate wineries in the Carneros region, and he had a friend visiting from Florida, and they decided to come to my winery, and I blind tasted him on a Riesling, which, just fun fact about Pablo, Riesling is one of his favorite varietals. His other being Cab Franc.
That's true.
And he saw me, he fell in love with his love at first sight, and then I blind tasted him on a Riesling, and then I goofed around with his friend and him a little bit, and he left googly eyed and in love, and I just thought I made a business connection. So one of my favorite things that Pablo's ever said is well now, geez, we're almost at what, 5 years, 6 years?
6 years almost.
6 years. Yeah.
Time flies, man.
But when we first got together, he would say something like, I've been dating her for 6 months. She's been dating me for 3, because that's pretty much how that went.
There was a 3-month period there where, she claims that she wasn't already in love with me, so she put up a fight, but I had to basically spend 3 months really bringing her around.
Anyways, this wine is fabulous. One of the things is, I call Pablo Pobs, but his dad used to think that I was blowing smoke up his butt when he first started. His first vintage was 2018. He had a Merlot and a Cabernet, and I was one of the very first to ever try it.
You were the first.
Oh, I was the first besides his taste. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I just knew. I knew that he was gonna be a good winemaker in that moment. I used to be a huge fan. Was it the Cab for me?
It was the Merlot.
Yeah. It was the Merlot that I was like madly in love with. And then it was like I was always team Merlot. And the Cab was awesome too, don't get me wrong, but Merlot was like my favorite. And by the time it was all said and done and we finished, the Cab became my very favorite. And so he had the first pick 2018 Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot. And that was just it was nice. Yeah, to be able to I just knew he was going to be a good winemaker. So when I talk about his wines, it's not for any other reason, because I know you don't know me, but Pops knows me, and I am brutally honest.
That's true.
So when I don't like something, I tell him, and I don't care what he thinks about that, because I think he needs to know. So don't ask me for my opinion if you don't really want it. And this particular wine as a blend is awesome. Let me just taste it one more time.
Let's taste through.
Mm-hmm.
What are you picking up there, Sheensy?
I don't want to talk about flavor profile as much as I'd like to talk about the way that it drinks. This wine is awesome because it's light and very bright. It has great fruit notes. It would pair so well with a lot of foods, if I'm honest with you. It gives me, I just love the way that it drinks. It's a super easy drinking red wine, if I'm honest with you. Not quite on a Pinot level.
No, it's got a little bit more.
Yeah, it has more depth than that, but it's still like something that in the middle of summer, I would love to just pop it and drink it, like for a red. I know sometimes, especially in California, the summers can be so hot that you don't think about reds all the time to open. You think about chilled whites to cool you off. And this, I still think, would be a very fun wine to open and make you feel good.
Yeah. I really like, and this is something that I try to keep prevalent in all my wines, but that acid, that high acid kind of that bright tartness. And this wine really has that. It's showing it very well in spades right now. I don't think I mentioned what it was, but it's a blend of Cab, a little bit of Syrah, some Tempranillo, Malbec, and Cab Franc. So definitely a more off the wall kind of red blend, but it all works.
And even though, I mean, you know that one of my favorite things to eat is a steak. And even though it doesn't have like those big, bold, I guess, notes like a Cabernet or a Cab Franc or something like that, you usually generally geared towards a steak. The acid on it is awesome.
Yeah.
It would pair so well with a fatty ribeye of some sort and just whatever salad was on it. I mean, it's a great food wine, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah, and it's, once again, Identity Crisis Red Blend. It's available on my website, identitywines.com. You can get this bottle for a whopping $20. Sorry, I had to put the plug in there. It is,
You guys, I swear I didn't choose this bottle for the promotion. But here it is anyways.
Do you want to tell them what the other options were, or just leave it at what you chose?
We had a Sokol Blosser coming out of Willamette, Oregon.
It was what, Chardonnay? Pinot? What was it?
It's a Chardonnay.
Yeah.
And then we also had what was it, 1998 Inglenook?
It was a 2014 Inglenook.
Oh my god, I'm so wrong.
Rubicon Red.
We're going to need to edit that out. 2014 Inglenook.
Or was it 2018? It's one of, I don't know, whatever. Doesn't matter.
Why did I think it was 1998?
No. Maybe, I think it was 2018 Inglenook. No. Not 14. But
all right,
anyway.
The topic is.
Yes, so moving on, like we mentioned on the show, the guest comes up with a topic. Sheena has a topic. She's going to bring it up right now.
So what happened was we were discussing, since the beginning of the year, and we were discussing doing this podcast in general and like what we wanted it to look like and things like that. I probably will not be a part of the podcast after today, depending on how much I razz him. But we were talking about that, and then I saw an article from the SF Chronicle that said red wine sales are tanking at SF restaurants. Quote, never seen anything like this. And the article was quite interesting. So just a quick little synopsis without reading the entire article. Red wine sales in San Francisco have dropped by 11.9% from the second quarter of 2023 to the second quarter of 2024. And that's according to the data provided by Toast, which is, I'm sure if you've ever used a credit card at a restaurant and they've stood at your table side, they're using Toast to ring you up. But I mean, the little thing here that they've got is pretty interesting as far as the transactions and what's going on with the numbers here. So red wine from 2023 to 2024, red wine is down 11.9%, whiskey is down 9.3%, sparkling wine is down 8.6%, tequila 6.3%, vodka 6.0%. Beer 5.3%, white wine 4.7%, and gin is down 1.8%. I think that's because nobody drinks gin anyways.
I love gin.
I'm just kidding. But on the opposite end of that, there is something that is up in sales as far as drinks go, and it is not iced tea or soda beverages. It is, in fact, the mocktail, which I found to be really, really interesting. There was a quote in here that said, red wine has such a bad rap right now. And, that goes to, like, people talking about, red wine gives them a hangover or a headache or, some people say that their tannins make them sick, things like that. And so I just thought it was a really interesting topic and something worth discussing as somebody who is actively in wine and somebody who now dabbles in wine, me. And, I thought it was really interesting because I being in Napa Valley, I recently left the wine industry, about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago?
About 2 years ago, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was about 2 years ago.
Longer.
And, I noticed something too with that. I mean, when I was in tasting rooms, it's just not the same anymore.
Nope.
Things are just not the same. And so one of the things that I noticed, one of the reasons why I really wanted to get out of wine, if I'm honest with you, is that I love wine. I think wine is amazing.
Yeah.
And there's so many fun facts about it. And I don't know what it's like nowadays. We'll have to tell you about that. But when I was, towards the end of my career there, I was getting a lot of people that were just coming in and just wanting to treat wineries like they were bars, which is so weird to me.
Yeah. It's a complete paradigm shift. And there's a couple things, which we're going to cover, as to why we think it's happening. We can only speak to Napa, Sonoma, and the surrounding areas, but one thing, that the big thing for me, and we've said it before, is that Napa's kind of like, too big for its own good at the moment. The average tasting fee has gone up exorbitantly.
It's insane.
And hotels are not cheap. So like if you're coming to Napa for a weekend and all you want to do is just taste wine and maybe eat at a restaurant, you are dropping so much money in order to do that. They've kind of pushed out a certain kind of tourist and they are just only interested in the upper echelon elite. It's kind of disheartening.
Well, I think that you have it two ways. There's certain wineries that really focus and cater towards those who do want to treat Napa as if all the tasting rooms are just bars with
There is
free
an
flowing
aspect.
alcohol. You pay a flat fee and you're just going to get as many pours as you want. That is a thing. And then I think that there's those middle range of, you get the tasting rooms that are like right in between where they have knowledge for you, they have fun with you, they pour wine for you, but they know when to stop. They're not offering their product just for free.
Mm-hmm.
And they hope to make some sales. And then on the other end is the high of, we're here just to take your money. If you're here, we want you to buy wine. I mean, Napa does a vetting process sometimes.
They do. They definitely do.
With you, when you're making a reservation, I don't know if you know this, but sometimes they're vetting you. They're going to ask you questions, and that's their way of trying to figure out if you are in a certain area where you will or will not buy wine.
Yeah, you and I have done this in the wineries that we've worked at, where you call us and we ask you questions.
Yeah.
Like, where are you staying? What restaurants are you going to?
Mm-hmm.
What, are you renting a car hiring a private driver? All these little qualifying questions may sound like, we're just trying to inquire about you, but we're trying to find out how much money you're willing to spend.
And how much you've already spent. Yeah.
Exactly.
Where are you staying? Because that's a big deal. If you're spending a ton of money, you're most likely going to spend a ton of money on wine.
Right.
Where are you coming from in the world? I mean, geographically, there are people from certain places that are more frequently going to buy wine from you.
Yeah.
Shout out to my Texas ladies.
Oh my God, I love Texas.
We love you.
Selling,
Not only do you buy wine, but you are just a ton of fun.
A bucket of fun. Selling wine to Texans is
I love them.
Amazing. Also going to shout out to Florida because we can spend some money on wine too. But anyway, we're digressing. So as far as that article, from a winemaker's perspective, it is a very illuminating article. So that's one aspect. Us qualifying you is one big thing where we're just trying to see what you're willing to bring to the table and what you want to spend. So I think there is something to that in Napa.
Well, yeah. But I mean, as far as why people aren't drinking, something that we also noticed is that when we go out to eat, we're also not buying bottles.
True.
We're generally bringing bottles, and when we go out to wine bars, I feel like there's less and less people attending them. Like, do you feel that way? Like, I feel like, when we go to tasting rooms in downtown Napa, like, sure, there's a lively group or something, but not like it used to be.
Not like it used to be. I remember when I first came to Napa, like in 2018,
there
it was
were
like
people
rocking and rolling.
And people are
all over
just
the
not
place.
there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of factors about this, a lot of factors that you could consider. And so I just figured that we would discuss those things.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of factors, so we can get into it. What would be one factor you're thinking about?
I don't know. There's so many.
Well, let's start with one.
Well, I think that the newer generation is really, not even just the newer generation. I think that there's something to be said, and maybe it's because I'm not in wine anymore, but I'm in healthcare. People are trying to be more healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in general, I think that there's like a big boom with people really trying to be healthy. And it's not just about exercising and diet anymore. I mean, you also have things like Ozempic or Wegovy.
Uh-huh.
They not only decrease your appetite, but decrease your want or cravings of alcohol. And studies are finding that they're helping aid in people who have addictions. And so, I mean, that's something to factor in. But just the article had stated that wine has a bad rap, and they were talking about the headaches.
Yes.
And the hangover and things like that, which I think that on a winemaker standpoint, you have a lot to say about that.
Yes.
And as far as I know about wine, I have a lot to say about that. But the fact is that is in people's brains. It is in their brains. And if they hear something like, alcohol causes cancer, and alcohol is bad for you. And, they used to say a glass a day is fine, but now they're like, no alcohol whatsoever. People are really hopping on those trains. You hear something's not healthy for you, and they just stop.
Yeah, I mean it's funny. There's articles like that, and then usually the advertising behind those articles is like, drink this mocktail, or try Ozempic, or so it's like, well, what's the narrative here, right? But at the same time, as far as wines giving you headaches or sulfites, I think we're kind of circling that drain that we should probably just bring it up, right?
From a winemaking
Yeah,
standpoint.
from a winemaking standpoint, yes. So, the headache thing, that is, that could be a couple of factors, but number one, usually you're drinking, and it's not just a wine thing. It's, when you're drinking alcohol, you're either dehydrated to start, you're not drinking enough water, and then you're adding alcohol to the mix. So of course you're going to get like this gnarly headache. Also, higher residual sugar. If you're drinking like, it happens too when you're drinking like really sweet sugary cocktails, you're going to get that headache as well.
Well, and you feel hungover the next day.
Right, and
it's going to make you so sick because you're drinking a ton of sugar.
Correct. Another factor would be, you're drinking bottom of the shelf wine that has, stuff in it, chemical additives that will not be great for you.
Yeah, because you know what? I'm not going to lie to you. Fun fact, not that all the wineries in Napa do this. Most of them do not, but I would just like to state, wineries can add up to 30 chemicals into a wine and never have to state it on their label.
Yeah.
And that can go from the vines that they're being grown from to when they're making the wine to when they go to bottle.
Yes.
They can add things and we never have to know it about it as consumers. Again, I don't want to talk terribly about wine in Napa because honestly, majority of Napa wineries are making legit good wine. Some of them are not.
Yeah, some of them are not, and they don't have to disclose it. There is some talk in legislation of possibly forcing wineries to put ingredients on their labels. And as a winemaker who doesn't really play with those chemicals, I'm all for it. But yeah, it's a huge thing that could be upturning the whole industry. As far as sulfur and sulfites, that's another really big kind of like this big elephant in the room.
People talk a lot about sulfites if they understand them.
Yeah.
But I mean, sulfites are actually naturally occurring.
They're naturally occurring in fermentation, so you can't get them out. The government just, says that we have to put them on the label because of the fermentation process. But I mean, I'm not going to lie to you either. They're spraying sulfur out in the vineyards. As I'm doing barrel aging, I am putting sulfur into the barrels to make sure that the wine stays nice and crisp and clean. It's the best way to protect against any kind of bacterial growth. And the sulfur does dissipate out from those barrels. So, as winemakers, as an industry, we monitor our sulfur levels very highly. And I can tell you that wine is the least offender when it comes to adding sulfur. If you drink soda, if you eat salads or produce, if you eat nuts, those are three things that have higher sulfur levels than wine does, but nobody ever complains about getting a headache from eating a salad.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. The sulfur argument's a really hard one for me because it's just it's such a witch hunt, if you will. And it's just something that like, if you don't really understand it, why go after it?
Well, and it's like, look, not to call anybody out because we are a very inclusive podcast.
Yes.
Here, okay. We don't want to call anybody out, but of course everybody has opinions. So if you're offended, very sorry. But I tend to personally believe that a lot of people hear things and they just hop on it. So when you hear sulfites, you've heard that sulfites can cause this, and you hear the word sulfites and you go, oh my gosh, I've had a bad experience. It must have been the sulfites because that's what somebody told me. And so here we are, and now I'm staying away from them. All wine has sulfites. I'm sorry. It's just, I don't know. It's.
Yeah, even the wine that you import, because I've always heard this too. It's like, oh, I drink wine from Europe or France because it doesn't contain sulfites.
It does.
It does. In Europe, they don't have to disclose that it has sulfur, but there's sulfur in those bottles as well.
So in a way, just something to think about, to enlighten, and to maybe broaden your outlook if you are one of those people. I mean, just not everything that you hear and or read is true.
That's poignant for every day too.
But we're not going to.
Yeah.
Because that's not the kind of podcast we're making.
Yeah.
But yes, at the end of the day, it is still alcohol. This is true. And alcohol can be bad. It just depends on the person and their sensitivity level, things like that.
That age-old saying too, in moderation. But
Absolutely.
That's with anything.
But I think at the end of the day too, it's just like people doing what's best for them, right?
Yeah.
Like it is. I think the point that I guess I'm trying to drive home, and I think you would agree with, is just don't hop on the bandwagon because you heard something and you think that that's what it is. I mean, ultimately, we just do what's best for us, right? Some people have different reactions to different things. Some things bother people more than others, and if just don't stop drinking wine if you like wine. I really love wine. I think wine is so fun, and I would rather drink it than me. I have a cocktail. What's my favorite mixed drink?
Oh God. Well, I mean, you like old fashions, don't you?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you got
Yeah.
it. You were nervous.
Whew, I was nervous.
He was nervous, y'all. No, an old fashioned. That's like
Yeah.
my go-to, and
Mhm.
that's if I'm going out and everybody else is having a cocktail. I'm like, you know what? Tonight I'll not have a cocktail. And I'll have
Yeah.
a cocktail with the boys or whatever.
Yeah.
That's the one that I get. I tend to go there. But when I do drink, if I'm drinking, it's generally a glass of wine. I love wine.
Yeah, especially at a restaurant. Like to me, like I don't know, maybe I grew up in the culture, but like you go to a restaurant, you order a glass of wine or a bottle of wine if you're in for a nice meal.
Yeah.
And I've noticed, you and I, we like to go and eat. We consider ourselves little foodies. We notice less and less bottles of wine on the table.
Yeah.
So it's
Well, and
very
like I said, we're also bringing wine.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, so we talked about the health
Yeah,
factor,
we
and I
talked
guess
about
that brings us to like, why don't we buy bottles of wine? Which I think is the general consensus. I was so interested in this San Francisco Chronicle article. One of the reasons why Pobbs and I don't buy wine is because one, contrary to popular belief, even though he is a winemaker, we actually do not drink a ton of wine. Most people think that we're like popping bottles left and right every single night, and we do open bottles, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like that. And mainly, if we're opening more than one bottle, it's when we have guests over and we're
Yeah.
sharing it with them.
Totally.
But one of the reasons why I think we don't buy is because one, he's a winemaker, so we have a plethora of bottles that either he's made or have been gifted to us. And two, because bottle pricing
Yeah.
is expensive.
Bottle pricing is out of control.
And this is the part that actually brings me to you and your winery and all small wineries.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, I'm just going to say it and break it down the best way that I can. Hobbs has wines that he makes and he knows how much they are per bottle. And then he sells them to a distributor. This is one of the ways that we can get wine out there anyways, distribution. So he sells it to a distributor at a set price. Let's say it's, what's a good case number?
Well, it depends, but
From us to them, how much is the markup from you to a distributor?
about 12 to 18%.
Okay, so Pobbs is getting about 12 to 18% markup on the wines that he's making. And then the distributor is going and selling it to restaurants and or wine tasting rooms or accounts, or we'll just say wine accounts as a whole.
Yeah.
And what is the markup look like from that?
I believe they're at 5 to 15%.
So from the 12 to 18%, in addition, they're getting about 5 to 18%. So this is where things get funny, because Hobbs is making about 12 to 18% off of his wine. The distributor. Oh my gosh! The distributor is making, you said 5 to 15%, but the restaurants
and the retailers
are making what percentage?
30% or more.
So they're actually making the most money off of his wine. So the small winemaker gets shafted, because if you think about it, big wineries have tons of money. They've got all sorts of things backing them, and they make a ton of wine. It's not always
advertising, marketing,
small crafted, wines. Hobbs and other winemakers that are small winemakers are getting completely shafted in this deal. But distribution is one of the only ways for them to get their wines out, because it's so much. It's not one of the only ways, but it's the easiest.
Especially across state lines, you have to go with the distributor if you're going to sell wine across state lines, which I do. And then you mentioned like DTC, which if you want to explain what that is.
Yeah, so DTC is direct to consumer, right. And that's a lot harder, especially in Napa, because here's the deal. Hobbs makes these wines, and he makes them with love. I know every winery says that, but he does. Pablo works a full-time job at a winery, and he comes home and he works on his business. And then during harvest, he works on his wines. I mean, this is a literal labor of love that this man is doing. He is giving all of his time and effort. And
Thanks.
yet, you're welcome. Well, good for you though, honestly. You know, this is his passion. He is genuinely making it with love. And it's something that he wants to, so he gets joy out of it, of course. You know, there is something in it for him. But when it comes to getting your name out there, you're working in Napa, when you have like the biggest wineries that people come here to learn about. One, you know, it's very difficult to rent a space for a tasting room. And even then, we have friends that are small winemakers that own tasting rooms, and it's just not going great.
People pass them by if they're going to the other people.
They're
Which is
going
fine.
to the big
Yeah,
guys.
that's. I'm not trying to spin a sad story for capitalism here, but it's
I'm
just
spinning it.
yeah, yeah. But there is something to, you know, like we're at a point where like the big guys have everything and don't want to let anything go, and that's good business and greed, if you will. But a lot of the small guys are just not even looked at, not even considered, because we're just there's no outlet for us. There's no nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
So then even if we have these amazingly priced bottles, which our bottles are amazingly priced compared.
Yeah.
Getting them into restaurants, even still, they're going to be at a better price than other well-known wineries, but they're still expensive. So it's not like we're getting our name out there anyways. I mean, Pops has an account here in Napa that is I mean, in my mind, it's an institution.
Yeah, it's one of the best.
It's one of the best
wine accounts.
restaurants in Napa Valley. I mean,
Yeah.
it's one of the most well-known. It is an actual institution of Napa Valley. And, you know, he sells his wine there, and that's great. He has his, you have your Cabernet Sauvignon there.
My
Yeah.
Napa Valley cab is on that list, and it's actually the most affordable cab on the by the bottle list.
And even still, it's one either looked over or
Yep.
two just not bought, you
Yeah.
know? And so it's hard to get your name out there is all I'm saying. And I think that when you have this whole restaurant business, it does actually take an effect on him as a winemaker in general, because now people are, if wine sales are down across the board, then how is he supposed to get his wine out there?
Yeah.
But yet people complain about the price of wine being too expensive, but they're unwilling to look at small winemakers. And I want to know what that's about.
One thing I want to talk about too is we talked about this offline, and I want to bring it up is how the consumer thinks they're helping, but they're actually hurting. And that is when you go to the grocery store or your retail bottle shop, one thing that you might not know is when you're walking down that wine aisle and you see like these thousands of bottles, there's only like maybe 3 major wine companies that own pretty much that entire aisle. So when you get this little bottle, and of course, like in craft beer, they're marketing it to make it look like a small crafted thing made of love, but it's actually owned by a big, massive conglomerate. And that is, you know, something that I will never have a chance to get into those big retail stores, because the big 3 are just like pumping out all these, we call them critter wines or fake labels, because there's not even an actual winery that exists.
And I'm not going to lie to you, majority of the wines that are giving you those headaches
Are
or
those.
have the things in them are going to be those big conglomerate just pumping out thousands upon thousands of cases of wine a year. I'm not going to mention any names, but I mean, a big proprietor of that is those little, what are those little mini bottles you can get?
The little splits?
No, not even the splits. They're smaller than splits.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? The little
175s.
Yeah,
they come in a 4-pack.
Yeah, you know, even those, stay away from those, y'all.
Yeah.
Stay away from those. Leave those for the little kids that want to get drunk. Stay away from those.
Yeah. I almost just said another major
Don't
label.
do it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
But I mean, but yes, and you know, you actually see that in tasting rooms as well, which cracks me up. Sometimes, you know, you would be talking to guests, and you're like, "Where'd you come from?" And they list off these wineries, and you're like, "Oh, cool."
Yeah.
Because I know that they're all owned by the same company.
Yeah. And I mean, we're at a point where we have like major private equity firms. We have cigarette companies that are invested in wineries.
And now we also have a lot of tech people.
Yeah, tech people
who are buying wineries.
Which,
and it's like, what are you in tech? Like, why is tech? I think this is completely off topic, but again, one of the reasons why I personally got out of wine. I love working with Pablo because he's my connection to the side of wine that I love. But one of the reasons, it was hurting my feelings.
Yeah.
That I just feel like we have lost.
It's become a status symbol.
Was. Yeah. And for a lot of, not just Napa, but there's a lot of pretentiousness in wine.
Yep.
That also, I think, doesn't cater to the newer generations who don't give a shit, pardon my French, about pretense.
Yeah.
They just don't care.
Yeah.
You have to meet people where they are. And when you're, waxing poetic about how wine is made, nobody gives a crap. Like,
Yeah, no,
nobody
it's true.
cares about that unless they ask you.
It's true. I mean, like you said, I work for a major winery. I work in a tasting room, and like some wine educators, they will just tell that story and get really into it. I like to wax poetic when I feel like I'm talking to people that are really into it, but most of the time, I would say 95% of the time, when I'm like talking about wines to people that are sitting with me, they're not really paying attention. Their eyes are rolling. They don't care, and I know to like back off and just be like, look, read the room, right? But there is a lot of that. Like, sometimes you walk into a winery, we're not going to name names, but like, where it's just like, oh my God, even us, me as a winemaker, Sheena, who's been in the industry, we're like, oh my God, this guy's so full of shit. Like, come off.
Yeah,
it,
what
mate.
do you, right,
Yeah, so,
right.
Yeah.
And then we just laugh the whole entire time and
Right.
just drink the wine. So there's that.
So there is, wine does have that nasty kind of connotation, right?
Well, and that's something that's been, I feel like, growing through the years, if I'm honest with you. And I don't know exactly how that big monster happened. Maybe it was because Napa is Napa. I mean, it's the biggest wine region in the United States. I just, I personally, like, I know that like I said, I love wine now, but I didn't always. I grew up in Napa since the age of 16. All of my friends started working in wine, and I fought it. And it was because on my first tasting, I remember going through a cave, and a man was actually, I can't remember what it is now. I'm too old. But I remember I asked, he said something, and I was like, what is that? And I asked him, and the way that this man answered me made me feel so stupid. Like, I can't believe you don't know what that is.
Yeah.
But it's like, not everybody does know.
It hurts the whole industry when that happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because if I'm asking you, like, obviously I don't know. And you know what, sir? There was a time when you didn't know either.
Right.
So I think that there's this pretense, which is also steering people away from drinking wine in general, or wanting to enjoy wine in at least our valley.
That's true. I mean, I think it's like, it's a lot of, oh God, this is hard because, we don't want to offend anybody, or like, we don't want to like go after people, but like the wine influencers that like are just so like, this is a unicorn bottle, this is like $2,500, I'm so cool, look at me. It's that whole like mentality that is hurting the entire industry, because it's like, cool story, bro, you're posting about this wine that we can probably never drink in our lives, and you're making it seem like this unattainable thing. Why would I even want to learn more about this? Why go down that rabbit hole if you're like shoving something down my throat that I can't have? So wine really suffers from it.
Yeah. And I think that Pablo and I can both attest to the fact that, like, I've had very expensive bottles of wine.
Yeah.
I think my most expensive was probably around closer to a $5,000 bottle of wine. Yeah. I was very lucky, y'all. And it was okay. I don't know if that's because my expectations were too high. It wasn't bad. I'm not going to say it was bad. It was okay. But I've had bottles that were like $30, $40, $50, $60, and I'm like, wow, this is really good. And maybe my expectations are low, because you know what? Expectations are something. But this actually brings me to another point about the whole, why aren't people buying and ordering or drinking wine?
Before you get to that, let me just sidebar here real quick. So 2 things. So to you personally, what is a price for, like, what's your top price for a bottle that you're like, okay, you know what? I'm willing to spend something, I'm willing to spend X on this bottle.
I think that that's a really difficult question for me, because I'm not just a normal drinker, because I do know about wine. Mm-hmm. So it depends. But I mean, if we're talking, since we are in Napa, and since we do specialize in Cabernet Sauvignon, if we're talking about cabs, I think the max price that I would pay, and it has to be a good bottle of wine, would probably be around like $120.
Okay.
$120, $130, somewhere in that range. I would be very happy purchasing that bottle. But again, you know me, I don't like to spend money on wine.
Yeah.
Which is a terrible thing. You're gonna need to cut that.
No, it's okay. I might not.
No, I think that I would spend that money, and I have spent that money on wine because it was that good, right? But I think that as a normal quote unquote consumer for other people,
That's what I'm
I
trying to get
think
at.
that a good range for a Cabernet
hmm
that is still on the pricier side but very good would probably be around $80
I'm
to $90.
totally in that same wheelhouse. Yes.
And that's how it used to be about 10, 15
Yeah.
years ago.
Mhm.
Obviously, not 20, 30 years ago when
Right.
those bottles were going for like 30, $40. You know,
Right.
I mean, obviously, times change, things change. I mean, our economy has changed.
Yeah.
So I think $80 to $90 is a solid range for a good cab.
Yeah, no, and I'm kind of right around there. I mean, I really start like getting annoyed. That's probably the best way I'm gonna put it. Getting annoyed when I go to like a winery and I try their cab or whatever, and they're like, "Yeah, this bottle is 155, 160." I'm like,
Why? Yeah.
like,
Oh, but it's 20% off if you
right,
join the wine club.
yeah, you're right, yeah. But it's funny because wine and like most things, it's like, what value do you put on it? What does it make you feel comfortable? And that answer changes for everybody. I remember like, when I first came to Napa and I was hanging out with a bunch of, let's just say, little douchebag wine snobs.
Yeah.
And somebody brought out a bottle of, this really cult iconic wine. And he opens it for all of us. And then he like slams on the table. We all take a sip and he's like, this bottle is $850 for this bottle, worth every penny, right? And everybody's like, yeah, cool, cool. And I'm like, no,
No, not really.
not at all. And he like drops his jaw. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I would never pay. Like, thank you for sharing the bottle. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. This is something that I love and like this, it is very good. But I would never pay $850 for this. No way.
No.
So I think there's something to that. Like everybody's number is different. And
Well,
I think,
of course, it depends
yeah,
on.
but
And
I
I
think
feel
your
like
average
when
number
you're
is good.
talking about people like that too, there is something that comes from, obviously, this person
hmm
is very much about the prestige of
Yeah.
things, and that's fine. They're
hmm
probably the one who wants to, drive the most expensive car,
Right.
have the most expensive clothes, have
Yeah.
the most expensive watches and shoes, but they can barely afford their rent. I
Yeah.
don't know. So, but everybody's things are different, and that's not our place to judge. But I feel you on that, and
Yeah.
I do think that $80 to $90 is good. And the only reason why I say 120 to 130 is because my favorite cab house in the valley.
I know.
I'm like madly in love with it. I was actually, and I'm not biased. I loved it before I worked there, but I did get to work for them. And I absolutely love their wines. And one of the things I loved about them, when you talk about putting a price on a bottle too,
Yeah.
it's that there's a price that they have. It starts off at 120. And then every year that they celebrate, which is storage, which does count in prices.
Sure.
Most wineries will add about $20, $30 on top of that just to store it for 1
I'm
year.
okay with like vintage wine. I understand paying a
Yes,
premium.
but this cab house only adds $5 per year for storage.
Yeah.
So the bottle then goes from 120 to 125. And I also appreciate the fact that like they have had 100-point wines from Robert Parker and
Yeah.
more so recently Antonio Bologna. And
We get it. You worked at a great cab house.
okay,
We get it.
anyways, I love them. But I mean, they even then their 100-point wine, they still weren't like, this is a 100-point wine, we're gonna make it more
Sure.
expensive.
Sure.
And I think that also goes into it too, right? Like, not only do I love the wine, but I also love the family. I love the winery.
That's a
love
big
how
thing.
they are, and that is a big thing
Yeah.
because I know that I'm giving my money to somebody and something
Yes.
that is good.
Not some corporation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that also plays a part in my answer.
Yes. Yeah. Totally. Okay, cool.
So my thing
Yes.
that I was gonna that segues me into
Uh-huh.
is on the opposite end of influencers who are looking at these, very expensive bottles.
Mm-hmm.
There's the influencers who are doing, the canned things, the ready-made cocktails,
Yeah.
the wine by the box. I like, and not like, I'm not talking Franzia here. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no, it's come a
they've
long way.
gotten creative
Yeah,
with
we've come
it,
a long,
and like,
long way.
and I think that we're kind of in that generation, or I think that the newer generation is in that, where it's like they're not really into the wine for the wine's sake.
Yes.
They're into drinking for drinking's sake,
Mhm.
which doesn't have to have anything. And I think that's the part that also makes me sad because I really was not ever into wine, and then it just happened. I went to Italy, that's what it was. I went to Italy, I started learning a little bit about wine. I was like, this is my backyard, why don't I do it? And the more that I learned, the more I fell in love with it. I freaking love wine. It's so interesting and amazing.
To me, and I think that segment that you're talking about is very interesting. I I'm all for, wine in a more eco-friendly
Absolutely.
package.
Yeah.
I'm not scoffing at wine in a can, wine in a box, especially because it's not, and you threw a name. First time
I said Franzia.
yeah.
Come on. Because wine in a box. Everybody knows Franzia.
Okay.
Come on.
Good.
Wine in a
We
box.
promised we wouldn't.
When we say wine in a box, we say Franzia.
I'm not going to edit that out.
Come on.
I won't, but we promised we wouldn't talk about
Come on.
actual things. But
There's
okay.
the Tour de Franzia. Come on. Come on.
I get it though. I get it. I will let that slide. But I do think, there was a time when box wine, jug wine, canned wine had this connotation of being bottom of the shelf, cheap
Right.
stuff. Even screw caps are like a big deal now in the industry where like more and more higher end wines are using screw caps. So I think that's great and I support that and I love that. I do have an issue though, or not have an issue, but like the whole idea of like drinking just for drinking's sake and not like, like diving into the world of wine.
When it comes to wine.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, because there's so many amazing things to know about wine.
Exactly. It's such a beautiful world, and I know
it's
that
a beautiful craft.
It's a beautiful craft, yeah. And
if you really get to know it, it actually is a very.
And you don't have
craft.
to know everything, right? You don't.
No,
but
the things that you could know about it, like just the bare, and that's the thing. You know me. When I run a tour, I'm not talking about like the ins and outs of how wine is made. But I am going to give you the funnest little tidbits about them, like things that you might not know that are just like, really?
We need more people like that. We need more people like more,
me, thank you.
Or like you, or but we need more like influencers, Instagram personalities, whatever the fuck you want to call them. Sorry, I don't get. We're gonna curse on the show.
Oh man.
But whatever you want to call them, they need to focus less on like the snobbery and the bullshit, and get into like what makes this craft so fun, so really like approachable and just good and wholesome.
Right, because you and I both agree. We both agree on this. There are a lot of people that we know that would not agree with this statement, which is just crazy to me because the audacity, okay? But you like what you like, I like what I like, and our palates are completely different.
Right.
So if you're going to tell me that this bottle is like God's gift to wine, and I don't feel that way, I don't want to feel bad about it because my palate says no.
Right.
I mean, it's just how it is. Everybody's different. And so people are going to like what they like.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
And you know what? And that's not to knock anybody. And that's why I say we're very inclusive. Because even if, like, take my brother, for instance. My brother and I have a 13-year gap between us. So he's of a younger generation. And, he likes wines that are sweeter. And that's just where his palate is. Mm-hmm. And we've given him wines that aren't sweet, things that we would drink. And he appreciates them. But they're not the ones that he would gravitate to. And we're not going to knock him for it. Like, if that's what you want to drink, by all means, drink it. And we're both of the opinion that if you want to start with a wine, do whatever you got to do to get you to where you need to go. You know, I have a friend, who I'm talking about, my friend, that she would drink, certain wines at the store that were a little bit cheaper and more affordable for her to buy every day. And then I started popping bottles of the good stuff, or what I consider to be the good stuff, the more higher end, better made, quality wines that are more expensive. And she is like, you have ruined me.
Right. That everybody says that.
You have absolutely ruined me. Because once you pop it, you can't go back. Like, you just can't.
You can't. So. Yeah, totally. One thing I do want to say, like, I think, and I think you'd back me up on this, is like, wine has been here before. Wine has gone through peaks and valleys, dips and high points. And, one thing that I do maintain, and I get asked this at the tasting room all the time too, is like, why do you think, attendance is down, or like, but whatever. And I think, yes, right now the younger generation is not really into wine. They're into all the other things, but they're going to grow up too eventually. And they're going to get to a point where they want to, invite people over, entertain. And wine is very much that more sophisticated, that classier thing to offer to your guests, to offer to people, to get into and kind of like, show that you've arrived in life. So I do think that this whole demographic and generation that's not really drinking it will come around and drink it at some point. We just need to hold on, is where I'm at.
Another reason that I had thought about was, do you think that making weed legal has something to do with that? Because look, I used to dabble when I was younger. No, I didn't dabble. I was a pothead. Okay, I loved smoking weed.
Yeah.
It was honestly my choice, my I don't know, my buzz of choice, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I would take that over a glass of wine or alcohol or anything, any day. But I do think that like having marijuana be so easily accessible might also be like something that's contributing to wine not being that much of a thing, or
Interesting.
alcohol. Because if you remember in the beginning of this, we talked about the numbers, and it wasn't just wine that was down.
Yeah.
It's all alcohol,
As a
and
whole.
mocktails were up.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe people are just getting stoned in the parking lot and they're like, well, fuck, I don't want to get, crossfaded. So I'm just going to order some mocktails so I feel like I'm drinking. I don't know. That's just a theory.
Yeah.
But do you think that might be playing a part in it?
Initially, I did not. And I know you had your notes and you were going to bring this topic up, and I was like, I don't think that's viable, but there might be something to that. Even in our county, in Napa County, Napa County really fought recreational weed is available in the state, but it was each county that decided if they wanted dispensaries,
and they fought against it.
And then finally we have 2 or 3 dispensaries.
Oh, we've got 5 now.
We've got 5 dispensaries in our county, and it just so happens
I don't know how I know that, you guys.
Just so happens that now that we do have those dispensaries, wouldn't you know it, wine consumption is down. So I think there is some kind of a correlation. We are getting a different demographic, younger clientele that's coming to the valley. And yes, but there is kind of that aspect that I must admit must be affecting.
But I do think that when I was younger, it was like, well, if weed is not readily available for me, like I ran out or my friend doesn't have it or something like that, and they're passing around drinks or something. I mean, it's definitely a different generation, and that's just how we rolled. But of course I'm going to drink. You know what I mean? I don't have weed, so why not? Like I said, marijuana was my buzz of choice. You know what I mean? And then alcohol was my second. Even when I used to go out to bars all the time, I would go out to bars all the time. I might have a drink. I just stayed high. And I would drink water.
You can literally have it in your pocket and just vape it. Like
yes.
Right there.
I think it's like a e-cig or something, or whatever you guys call it, like vape. I don't know. I don't know what you kids call things.
And not knocking marijuana because I really have no problem with it, but it is marketed as a much healthier kind of alternative to feel something, to get a buzz, to get high, whatever.
Which is really funny because going back to the health thing and the things that we hear.
Yeah.
Marijuana, especially vaping.
Have fun with your popcorn lung.
Oh, stop it. Is not necessarily better. I mean, the process that you have to go through to extract the oil, you're no longer smoking flower. And regardless
of if you are,
exactly. Yeah. And if you are smoking flower, even in that instance, I just want everybody to know as a blanket statement that yes, it is from the earth. It was grown. What bad could it cause? Y'all are smoking dried plants.
Yeah.
That is not good for you. Again, I still love marijuana. Yeah. I don't dabble in it anymore, unfortunately. But
I have friends in the marijuana industry. They do good work, but yeah, it's
everything has its con.
Yeah.
Everything can be considered unhealthy.
True.
Just as it can be considered healthy in some respects. So again, do what you do, but please don't just hop on the fad of like, well, I heard this and that must be true, because you're not going to get, well, I can't say that. That's a negative. I can't say that either. I can't say you're not going to get something by doing something. I don't know if that's fact, but I think that in my personal opinion, I don't think that enjoying a glass of wine or 2 or even 3 at dinner is going to give you cancer.
Not at all.
Yeah. Personal opinions.
Yeah.
We're not doctors. We're not scientists. So we can't, and even if we were scientists, we could never say for sure.
Right.
That's just the best way to do it.
A lot of it is physiology and the way your, body makeup is and all that.
So then let's talk about my last thing that I wanted to bring up.
What we got?
This is something that I've been thinking a lot about, because remember when we were talking about just Napa in general?
Yeah. And
like what's going on in the valley?
Yeah.
I've noticed in the last few years that the traffic to Napa has also gone down.
Okay.
Just foot traffic in Napa. I mean, we live fairly close to downtown, and there are times when it's just like a ghost town, and we're like, what is happening? It didn't always used to be this way.
Yes.
And I did read an article. Again, here I am telling you not to believe everything you read, but it is something to consider. I read an article which makes a lot of sense. You and I love the city. We love San Francisco.
Yes.
We love San Francisco. And there was a point where I personally fell out of San Francisco, like love with San Francisco, because it took
me a while to come around to it. Yes.
And it was more so during COVID times, correct? Like it was just really, really bad.
Yes.
It was sad to go to the city.
To the point that when I came here from Florida to, in 2018, I was told, yelled at what a shithole San Francisco is and was. Mm-hmm. And I kind of was told what to
Looking.
look at
Yeah.
and look for it, and I found that nastiness. And then COVID, yes, was a whole thing, but I got it. Yeah,
I mean, COVID was tough because
Yeah.
you really couldn't go anywhere without seeing just sadness everywhere. It was
But
very, very sad.
yeah, I see San Francisco for the beautiful city that it
It's
really
so
is
beautiful.
now.
And the last
Yes.
few times that we've gone there, I mean, we've both commented how clean it is. They've done such a great job. We've had so many fun days in
Yeah.
San Francisco lately. Like in the last, year and a half, 2 years.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've had some awesome days in the city.
Yeah.
With the exception of that one time that we went to that one area and we were like, whoa, we need to get out of here. Right? Do you
Yes,
remember? It was,
yeah.
I don't want to say, it was the mission.
It was the
correct?
mission,
Yeah,
yes.
it was the mission.
Yeah.
Personal opinion, just from somebody, I love the mission because it has such great Mexican food. But as of right now, I would steer clear.
Super sketch.
If you don't want to see the things that are being publicized all over the nation,
Right.
and saying that it's all San Francisco. But again, believing in things that we see or hear.
Right.
The nation believes that San Francisco is just a shithole.
Lawless.
There's crime everywhere. And you're gonna die, or you're just gonna get pissed on by a homeless person, or just
You're gonna
something.
step on a needle.
Yeah, yes. There's like these things, and so I think that I didn't do the research on this one, and I should have because I think it's an interesting topic. But I do think that there's something to be said about the lack of people because SFO is the major airport.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're afraid to come to San Francisco and you're not flying in, and Napa's an hour away, then we may be losing people from that as well, right? And maybe San Francisco's also losing people from that as well.
It's a good thing that we need to look at the research on. Maybe like after we record this, we'll
do a little update.
Yeah. But there might be a correlation there for sure. Yeah. Interesting.
I just think it's something interesting to think about.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's so many different factors that can go into this, correct?
We didn't talk about, I know we wanted to the economy, and we kind of touched on it, but the economy has been in a downturn, so I'm sure people have less money to spend.
Absolutely.
So there's something to that too, but economies, just like, demographics, they go up and down. There's peaks and valleys. So that'll be interesting to see. If this trend is a downward trend or if it's just rocking in the waves of the economy. If this is the low part of it
at the moment, until the economy picks back.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's interesting, to say the least.
Yeah.
But wine is a beautiful, vibrant thing. Wine should be drank and enjoyed and kind of, just appreciated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on that note, I'm going to close us off.
Go for it. Come on, guest.
I'm feeling really good off of this bottle of identity crisis. Just some things that I would like to know because, how much is your Cabernet? You have 2 Cabernets right now.
I have 2 Cabernets.
You have the first pick Cabernet. And you have the Magnate Cabernet.
So first pick is my Napa Valley Cab. It's made from grapes from Oak Knoll District. It is Wine Club only at the moment because I make so little of it. Only a barrel of it has been made. So that one is $65 for the bottle.
Mm-hmm. Not pushing Wine Club, just letting you know.
No, not pushing Wine Club at all, but I'm just letting you know if you go to the website, you won't see it there.
Yeah.
Then I have the Magnate Cabernet Sauvignon, which is from Mendocino County, from really nice high elevation. Really nice and pronounced, big, vibrant. There I go selling the wine. But that is a $45 bottle for the Mendocino County.
And both of those are under what I would have said normal price range.
Yes.
Because I will be very honest with you. Pops and I talk a lot, and this is very much his company, but I do voice my opinion quite a bit, and I have been dying to raise the prices on these wines.
Yes.
They are fabulous, and I think that they deserve a seat at the table with all the other guys. But of course, being a small winemaker, he has to sell at a more competitive price, and even then, it's still not selling the way that we wish that it was.
Correct.
But what I was also going to get at is that not only Pablo is a very creative man, and it's one of the things that I love about him, and also one of the things that drives me the most insane about him. But he is not just the winemaker for Identity Wine Co. He is not just doing this podcast. He is also giving you fun and friendly wine information on his Wine Maverick Wednesdays that are on his Instagram at the Wine Maverick. And if you have any questions about anything that we spoke about, he pretty much leaves it open the day before. He'll post and say, hey, what do you want to talk about tomorrow? Like, what are your questions? You just write them in and he will answer them. And the most unpretentious way that he can think of. And don't get me wrong, I actually often tease him about this because I feel like I'm very, very but that's my bias. Pops does have a way. Sometimes he gets really. I mean, this is his passion. So sometimes a little pretense will come out. But for the most part, if you ask him something, he's going to answer it to the best of his knowledge in the most fun and friendly way possible. So if you like the podcast, if you like wine information, if you're just thinking about getting into wine because of the podcast or whatever, go check it out. Tuesdays he'll post a question or he'll post it up. You ask a question, he'll answer it on Wednesday. So be on the lookout.
Yeah, so that segment is called Ask the Maverick. I'm also going to be adding a couple other segments to make it nice and fun. That, once again, is at the Wine Maverick, my Instagram page. I also thought about maybe not everybody has Instagram, so I do have an email. If you want to send me questions via email and I can answer them here on the podcast, you can hit me up at thewinemav@gmail.com. So just send any emails there if you don't have Instagram or don't want to go to Instagram.
And we'll post that on the podcast,
Yeah.
information. And of course, like all podcasts, if you liked this oh, dang it, I'm drunk. If you liked this podcast, please click like and share. And be sure to follow us so you can catch all the newest episodes of this podcast, which, do we have a name for this even?
It's called the Wine Maverick.
Oh, we're really sticking with the theme here. Well, I guess everybody will be able to find you.
Yeah. One more thing, quick shout out to my intro and outro and break music. That was done by my dear friend Travis Roig.
He's the shit.
He's the shit. He's a great musician. He's Miami based. He did this for me and it was really nice. And yeah, I love it. I love the whole Top Gun inspiration, to go on with the Wine Maverick.
He also has a podcast called Terror on the Air.
No. So he's got a podcast called Roig Rage.
Oh yeah, Roig Rage.
Yeah, which is coming back. He's gonna have some new episodes up very soon.
And that's ROIGRAGE.
Yeah, Roig Rage. And then he also does a murder mystery podcast, which is called Terror on the Air. And it's old timey like murder mysteries from like the 40s to the 60s. Just good old murder radio. Very good. Very well produced.
On Spotify.
You can check him out on Spotify as well. Travis Roig.
Yeah, he's a fun time. He's great and creative too.
Love you, Travis.
Two creatives coming together. Beautiful romance.
Boom. All right, that is all the time we have today. This episode is brought to you by Identity Wine Company at www.identitywines.com. My guest has been Sheena Marie Baldia.
I'm drunk.
We'll talk to you next time.
It's been a pleasure.
I need a better sign off, but that'll be it for now.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, anytime. You can come back whenever you want.
Thanks for listening to me. I hope I didn't scare anybody away. If I did come back next time, it won't be me, I promise.
I will have some other guests lined up, so stay tuned. Bye!